Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call to order our hearing this evening. The purpose of this hearing is to allow the experts for the applicant to address the peer review studies that were submitted by Scott Turner of Judith Nitch and Associates on engineering issues and Jeffrey Dirk from Vanas and Associates, our traffic engineer, and to deal with those issues. I've asked Mr. Caggiano and his witnesses, because sometimes these engineering reports get very technical and detailed. Mr. Turner's report from Judith Nitch was extraordinarily detailed. So I've asked Mr. Caggiano to deal with the big ticket items involving that engineering report and not necessarily deal with the minutiae of the report, because everyone will be asleep by 7:30 at night or will leave. But obviously, Mr. Caggiano is going to try his case, and we'll let him proceed as he prefers. A couple of preliminaries. Let me introduce everybody tonight. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me tonight, to my immediate right, is board member Virginia Donahue King, and to my immediate left is board member Jeffrey Mullen. We're recording the proceeding this evening, so that would ask that everyone who wants to speak tell us your name and address before you speak. Speak up nice and clear and loud, so we'll have an accurate recording of this meeting if we have to revert to the tape in order to write a decision. Two preliminaries. We received a stack of materials, probably 6 or 7 inches high, from the applicant, containing a lot of engineering and traffic reports, as well as responses to general comments that were made by the peer review consultants. All of these documents are on file with the Board of Appeals office if anyone wants to to read them. They've been on file for at least 10 days, maybe more. So I think everyone has an opportunity to be prepared if they wanted to do so. The board has also received a letter dated April 19th, 2015, from Joseph R. Mullins of 300 Highland Street, Milton, expressing his views regarding this application and hoping that the board was going to reserve time before the hearings ended so that there could be public comment. And Mr. Mullins is absolutely right. We haven't had a lot of public comment. We've had some questions of the experts and the like. But we haven't had extensive public comment. We intend to do so. It's usually the best procedure to have that type of public comment after all of the expert testimony is in and the witnesses have been heard. So we've already heard from the town's peer review consultants. We've heard from the applicant's consultants. Now we're hearing essentially the responses by the applicant. The board also received a letter dated April 9th, 2015 from Attorney Joanna Schneider of Rackham & Sawyer and Brewster in Boston, indicating that she represents several neighbors and a neighborhood association, and that some of these neighbors are direct abutters to this particular project. And they have gone to the time, effort, and expense of hiring experts to not only look at the town's peer review experts, but also the applicant's expert reports. And they've requested a date sometime during the week of May 18th in order to provide evidence at an adjudicatory hearing such as this so that their experts can be heard. She also indicates that they hope to provide written materials to the Board of Appeals by the week of May 11th, about a week in advance. So if anybody wants to review the materials that Ms. Schneider is going to be submitting on behalf of a neighborhood group or direct abutters, just call Mrs. Fitzgerald at the Board of Appeals office, and she'll advise you if the materials have been filed and when they're available for you. Mr. Caggiano, let me ask you, do you have any dates during the week of the 18th that are particularly available for you in your schedule, so we can book that right here and now? How's your diary? Good.
We already have the 19th.
Yeah. And Mrs. Fitzgerald points out to me that we already have the 19th scheduled for a hearing.
Monday, 20th.
And that's a Tuesday? 19th is a Tuesday?
Correct.
Okay.
So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
So it looks like Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Mondays are always tough days. How about Tuesday, the 20th, or Thursday, the 21st?
Tuesday's the 19th, and Wednesday would be the 20th,
Yeah, Wednesday, the
Right.
20th, or the 21st.
or the 21st. So it would be a Wednesday or Thursday.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Tuesday. But you already had something on Tuesday.
Yeah, so how about the 20th or the 21st, which is the Wednesday or a Thursday? They're both awful. What's Monday? Monday better for you?
Monday's better.
Okay. Take a look at Monday as well, Mr. Casciano, but Mrs. King indicates that Wednesday and Thursdays are bad days. How about you, Jeffrey?
Wednesday the 18th?
No,
Monday,
18th.
Monday the 18th.
Monday the 18th. I could do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the
Yes.
team is available on the 20th, but not on the 18th or the 21st, unfortunately.
I didn't even hear.
He's not available Monday or Thursday. They're available on Wednesday the 20th. Not an early hearing or not? Is that better for you?
I've got a concert for a nephew.
What time?
Probably 7:30, right in the middle of it.
Why don't we do 5 to 7?
Okay.
Jeffrey, you available at 5?
Okay?
5 on Wednesday?
20th.
No, it's terrible. Mr. Casciano, are your people available at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, 5 in the afternoon?
Yes, that's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mullen?
You realize we have jobs.
I do realize that. You'd never know it by these proceedings. We might as well give up our jobs, but it will all come to an end soon.
Aye.
Mary, that good for you? Be here, though. This would be closed, right?
Yeah.
On a Wednesday. Okay. Jeffrey? All righty, we're
For
going
you, John.
we're going to schedule our next hearing on this matter. It's going to be for presently
May 20th,
May 20th.
5 p.m.
Monday, May 20th.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, May 20th at 5 o'clock. I hate to do 5 o'clock meetings. It's puts a burden on everybody. Part of the problem we're going to have here is we're running into deadlines when this case has to be decided. It has to be decided by the 19th. I'm not sure that the applicant is going to be able to complete its review of the peer review consultants tonight. We're starting at 6 o'clock, or more or less 6 o'clock, because a couple of the board members were not available for 8 o'clock. So we're going to go from whenever 6:15 to 8:15. If we're not able to continue the applicant's responses, we may actually try to schedule a hearing before this May 20th hearing. But on May 20th, the Neighborhood Association through Ms. Schneider is going to be able to make their presentation. And then a few weeks after that, we're going to have to schedule another hearing to give the applicant a chance to respond to whatever the neighbors come up with. And we also have to schedule at least one hearing for public comment and maybe more. So it's going to get a little intense, and I don't want to come near the June 19th date. I think that would be a terrible, terrible mistake. So I appreciate everybody accommodating the board under these circumstances. I also want to apologize. We had this hearing originally scheduled for the Council on Aging, where there's plenty of seating available for all of the people. Regretfully, that was usurped from the Board of Appeals, and so we're in bloat. The hearing on Wednesday, the 20th of May, is going to be in this very conference room because Council on Aging is not available to us on Wednesdays. So with all of that as a rather long preamble, Mr. Casciano, do you want to come up here, or do you prefer to sit in the audience? And okay, well, who's going to be making your initial presentation? Okay, Mr. Burke. Welcome back to the Board of Appeals, Mr. Burke.
You all set?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Burke. I'm a registered professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with DeSalle Burke and Associates. Offices are in Quincy, Massachusetts. And we prepared a fairly substantial response package for the ZBA's review. And I think I can probably go through my cover letter that addresses a lot of the items, and we can kind of keep it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can that gentleman speak up? It's very difficult to hear him back here.
Yes. Jim, you know what you may be, why don't you move over to the side and you... Yeah, but it doesn't project, it just...
It's for the TV guys.
It's just for the TV, it doesn't project out.
So, and forgive my back if I'm...
We can hear you.
Oh, gosh, where was I? So I'm thinking that to keep things moving along, this is just the way I see it, there are three main issues attached to this project: stormwater, soils, and access. And I can kind of flip through this letter and kind of bullet those items, and if anything else jumps out at me that I think are pertinent or important, I can proceed with that as well.
That'd be preferable.
Okay. So, I guess, you know, we'll start with access. You know, we have a wetlands crossing that we're just under the 5,000 square foot threshold, and there were a number of comments raised in Scott Turner's letter with regards to being able to achieve that goal.
Could I stop you?
Sure.
And just ask you one preliminary question? Did you have an opportunity to meet with Mr. Burke and discuss the issues? Mr. Turner, excuse me. And
We
discuss
did
these
not,
issues
actually,
with him?
you know, and I thought it'd be appropriate to meet with him after he has a chance to chew on that package a little bit. So maybe I'm thinking next week would be an opportunity to meet with him.
Why don't you continue, Mr. Burke?
Sure. So we have, you know, in that cross-section, a 24-foot road, a 4-foot sidewalk with a 6-inch curb, with retaining walls that support that access and bring utilities in with it. Now, that particular access wasn't, it was kind of designed that way. In the beginning, the client didn't own 711 Randolph Ave. He actually bought that at my suggestion so we could get under the 5,000 square foot threshold. I did a design using the layout of the old Meg Lane originally, and I think, you know, that footprint put us up to 9,000 square feet of wetlands. Now, part of the whole process of wetlands alteration is alternatives analysis. So one of the alternatives is, okay, can you get under that 5,000 square foot threshold? And at my suggestion, the client bought 711 and we accomplished that. And now everything seems to be, everyone's pushing us towards increasing that and saying that it's not a viable access. 24-foot wide roadway is a typical roadway, 2 12-foot lanes. Your cars are 7 feet wide. Your fire truck, we measured it outside, it happened to be out, that's 8 feet 3 inches wide. So to me, it's actually that nominal distance, 24 feet, is actually being changed down to 22. You'll find that a lot of municipalities are switching that down to reduction in pavement. Now, with the 90 units that it's providing access to, whether it's, 26 feet wide or if it's 22 feet wide, it's still a single lane. It's not, you're still having the same amount of vehicles coming in and coming out of that development. So I stand behind that access. I know I can build it. I've talked to the retaining wall supplier as well as the manufacturer, and that can be built. And that's in the letter with that explanation. Now, if we can move on to soils.
Well, I'm sorry,
Sure.
could I just stop you there?
Sure.
Can you point to any other projects that are in Milton or surrounding cities and towns that have a 24-foot access servicing a 90-unit apartment complex or a 100-unit apartment complex?
I don't, off the top of my head. I can point to a development in Hingham that has, less units, and it has the 24-foot.
And particularly on a roadway that's as busy and with the traffic counts as Randolph Avenue.
That, honestly, no. But as stated earlier, it's both the 4-foot wide sidewalk, it meets the handicap accessibility width and nominal width, as well as the 24-foot wide 2-lane road. So,
So are you suggesting that Mr. Turner's comment that you should have a 34 or 42-foot entranceway, or the fire chief's comments that the entrance should be bigger, or the Department of Public Works chief, who's a registered professional engineer, I understand, and his comment was that he thought it should be much larger for safety reasons. Is just suggesting that they're wrong, or is this something that reasonable men can differ as to the type of access, or?
well, and again, I wouldn't suggest that they're wrong, but I wouldn't go any wider. I wouldn't go wider than 24 feet for the vehicular access. If I could have gotten 5 feet on the sidewalk, I honestly don't think this issue would be even discussed. If I go 5 feet, I'm over the 5,000 square foot threshold. Now, my suggestion would be, if you wanted 5 feet for pedestrian, shorten it up on the road. To me, the corridor is fine. To increase the wetlands impacts for an issue that's perhaps a safety issue, and it's not. It just doesn't seem plausible.
Why do you say it wouldn't be safer if you had a wider and larger entrance, whether it's one barrel or two barrels?
I can see the whole barrel aspect with regards to the number of egresses. You can, if one side's blocked, then you have the other side to use. I can certainly see that argument. But in the end, you still have, if one barrel's, and if you're going to do a barreled way, you're probably going to make it, 11 feet. You're not going to do a 12, because it's just, too much pavement. And then you'd have the center island for more or less landscaping.
It seems like you're making your judgment to stay within below the 5,000 square foot threshold, because perhaps that would be more convenient or less expensive for the applicant, and then he wouldn't have to address as many issues, as opposed to what may be more feasible from just an access point or a public safety standpoint.
See, but there's two sides to that coin, in a sense that when you're looking at it from an environmental perspective. If I'm submitting this to DEP for,
Somebody, would you wave your hand, please?
if I'm submitting this to DEP for, for an order of conditions, and this has happened to me in the past with other projects. You fill in so many square feet of wetlands. Well, what are the alternatives to that? Can you reduce it down? And with the respect to that, you can show that you can have a nominal width pavement that is safe. You know, you have 30-foot radiuses at the entrance that allow the vehicle to enter that 12-foot aisle and 30 feet out. To me, it's more than safe. The roads, you can certainly find roadways that are off of Randolph Ave that are probably 24 feet, and we can.
Well, they would, but they're not servicing a 90-unit.
Well, if you're looking at maybe Sassamon and Manhattan, I don't know what the pavement width they are out there. I really don't.
I don't even, where is Nahan?
They're actually,
It's on the left going south.
yeah,
Across
they're
from
on
Oh, sure.
the
Okay,
opposite
sure,
side,
yeah.
heading up the hill. I think Bill Clark lives over there. But, there you go. But, you know, so the residential, and those neighborhoods are certainly well over 90 homes. But, you know, in Milton, a 50-foot layout for a residential subdivision road is 24 feet of pavement with 2 sidewalks on either side. That's a public way. We're looking to mimic that with a
one
driveway, and provide safe vehicular and pedestrian access for potential tenants. We wouldn't, generate something that's unsafe. And to say that an extra 2 feet or an extra foot would, save lives, I can't make that jump. Is it easier for people to speed in? Sure. And maybe that's unsafe. So to me, you go with the nominal dimensions, you design your roadway, you have thresholds, 5,000 square feet was one of them, and I strived to get that in imploring a client to spend extra money for the budding property so we can hit that threshold. And to me, the roadway is more than safe enough for construction and for future use.
So is this one of those issues where reasonable engineers acting in good faith can
Yes.
reasonably disagree on what would be the appropriate?
Exactly right.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of, yes, Mr. Burke?
So are you going to move on from access?
Yes, he is.
Were you about to move on
Yes,
from
I was ready to
access?
move off.
Can we stay on access?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure, that's why I stopped him.
So access is more than just the width of the cross-section. I have a couple of questions on access. What do you say about the testimony regarding the northbound backup from St. Elizabeth's back to the next signal in the AM, and the cars being able to exit and take that left-hand turn heading north? What do you say about that in terms of adequate access from the west side of the road?
Well, Dan Dulaski is in the audience tonight, and he's probably more prepared to answer that question. But from talking to Dan, my understanding is that queue taking a left turn out of that driveway isn't something that would be extensive.
I'm sorry, could I ask you,
Sure.
Mr. Burke, as part of the materials that Mr. Burke has filed, there's a traffic impact and access study, which is a revised study.
Right.
Thank you for filing that. Could I just ask Mr.
Yeah, you're the
Burke a
chairman.
couple- Yeah, I understand
I'm just
that.
a member.
Let me ask you this. This traffic impact and access study, the first one we got wasn't signed.
Right.
I think it may have been signed eventually. It certainly wasn't signed by Mr. Dulaski. Now you've signed this as the registered professional engineer. Could you tell me why Mr. Dulaski didn't sign this report?
Honestly, it comes down to, Mr. Dulaski's working for me. That document's coming out from my company. I own the company. So there's one reason, and another reason, it was expedited. Mr. Dulaski was not available to sign the documents at that time.
But is this Mr. Dulaski's report?
Yes.
Okay, so just like in the last instance where he actually testified, so that the record is really clear here.
Sure.
Because we're dealing with traffic, and I think traffic is one of the most important issues here.
Sure, I understand.
Because I don't want to see people injured or worse on Randolph Avenue here. This is Mr. Dulaski's
Report,
report.
yes, from my company.
Under your supervision?
Correct.
Okay, great. That's, Mr. Mullen, go ahead.
So we spent, so it's more than the queue though, right? So we spent a couple of hours walking the site. For those in the audience, Saturday morning, we had a joint walk down of the site with the Concom. And it included spending some time on the sidewalk on Randolph Avenue. It felt to me, I did take a look at the traffic impact and access study, but it felt to me like I know it was Saturday morning, but I'd like you to speak to the following comment. It seemed to me that the windows through which the exiting traffic headed northbound in the AM would be able to cross 2 lanes of southbound traffic and 2 lanes of northbound traffic, or 1 lane of northbound traffic, were exceedingly small, just given the cadence of the traffic and the release of the traffic from the lights. What do we say about that? Forgetting about the queue and the traffic backup, in some ways, that would make Randolph Ave slightly safer.
Sure.
Slow the traffic down.
I can speak from personal experience in taking that left, out of the DPW yard, out of 7-Eleven, out of Newcomb Farms, all up and down Randolph Ave. I have the benefit of doing a decent amount of work in this town. Wallaston Golf Club, come out of there for, I've been doing work in this town 20 years. And taking a left turn, at certain times of day, sure. I mean, I've been stuck in the DPW yard at 8 in the morning, and guess what? Instead of waiting for a kind soul to let me in, I'm taking a right. But can you make a left? Sure, absolutely can.
Can you safely take a left-hand turn?
I'm still
It's
here.
7 o'clock in the morning.
No, you're still here, but you take a right.
Mr. Casciano.
Could you hold the questions and comment for the traffic until Mr. Delaski is presenting this?
Oh, I didn't think I thought Mr. Burke indicated he may not be making a presentation.
Maybe
If he
not
is, we're
today,
delighted to
not
do it.
timing. However, Mr. Delaski can also approach now and address these comments
Sure.
directly, rather than Mr. Burke,
I mean, we can have Dan sit in as well.
Well, did you want Mr. Delaski to make a formal presentation? I'm delighted to hear from him.
But we do, we anticipate
Okay.
that Mr. Delaski will present after Jim presents the non-traffic related items.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, I have one more question then.
in place?
So on the, not getting off Randolph Avenue, there's 2 other access issues that maybe you can speak to, which really go to the site plan. The first is the comment from the fire chief about being able to turn around the fire truck up the top of the hill, particularly when coupled with his comment about the frequency with which the fire department would make a visit, which I was surprised to hear, but I believe it was something on the order of 4 or 5 times per week. Could you speak to the ability to turn up there and how that all works, and what the town and the occupants of the units could expect?
Sure. I mean, we've done some studies too with regards to the frequency, and we think the 4 or 5 times per week might be a little high. That being,
What do you think it would be, like more typical?
Mr. Chairman, in our response materials, we had provided some information from other towns with respect to comparable sized properties. And I believe, I'd have to confirm, but I believe that those numbers suggest 25 visits per year, as opposed to 3 visits per day, which is what
Per week.
Per week.
Per
not
week.
day.
Was it per week?
Yeah.
I believe our response material said per week inadvertently, but I believe what was said at the last hearing was per day, 3 per day. But in any event, even 3 per week exceeds what the comparable numbers that we receive from other towns with similar sized properties.
We've also submitted, along with that, some auto turn sketches that show the capability of the ladder truck maneuvering from that parking, the northerly parking lot, all the way back, backing up into that the southerly driveway that extends to the southwest, and backing in there and able to leave.
So you think that any truck, the largest truck of the town, would be able to enter and leave
That's
without
what I modeled. I actually had modeled it.
keeping people there
Yeah.
for the duration? And
I'm sorry, when you say they leave, do they have to back down that road?
No.
Towards the entrance? They could
No,
turn,
they'll
they could turn around? you think?
One of the other questions was that whether, we didn't show the right turn in, so we did that. So that's the egress, the access into the site. And then from that point at the top of the hill, this message, so it comes down, backs out, and goes.
Oh. You need to bring your...
You need your microphone, Jim.
Yeah, one of the stands.
And that's if one vehicle goes up there, it could back into that little area there and turn around and come down. I think the chief told us that if there was a fire or an emergency, a health emergency or something, you're liable to have the fire truck there, followed by an ambulance.
Right.
And maybe followed by a cruiser, and you're going to get a stacking up in that area.
Yep.
So how do people conveniently return out to Randolph Avenue after that issue has been taken care of?
In that particular unfortunate incident where, there's an emergency going on that particular site, the chief also stated that he would stagger the vehicles in as he felt they needed to be placed on the site. Now, as they're sitting on the site, there are going to be some vehicles blocked from being able to leave. It's short period of time, and most people, they'll be wondering what's going on, and but it's a reality in any particular site that would be like this, with the large emergency vehicles that are parked in the parking lot and trying to get access into a building.
So we can expect that during a fire emergency, there will be some congestion in the lot that will inhibit access to and from the site.
Yes, I think that's fairly typical.
Okay. What about, and this I think was also in your materials, but I think it'd be helpful to speak to, what do you say about the town's request for dual access, a double access point, and all of the issues around that?
Honestly, I think...
Always being honest with us. You have to say honestly.
Good point. The dual access, the access that could be allowed to the DPW yard, it's a great idea. You could follow the water line connection, put in kind of a grasscrete road, emergency access road, like they have in that development right off the corner of Canton Avenue and I forget the name of it.
Unquity.
Unquity, yeah.
Quissett Brook.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those roads. I've never seen them used, but honestly, it's a nice option to have. But we're at a point where I don't think the town would allow us that. There wouldn't be any additional wetland impacts. So is the feasibility there to do it? Sure. If the town allowed us, absolutely. But as far as a dual access in the front, we can certainly widen the road at the entrance. We have the room to do that, to do a right turn only lane, a slip lane, if you will. We have the room to do that. If that's something that that if the town think that's worth pursuing, we certainly can.
Right
that.
turn out
Yep.
on the 7-Eleven side. Is that what you're thinking? Is that?
Yes,
is that what
exactly right. You can probably fit 3 vehicles in that length, wide the road in that location.
Lose your snow storage.
True.
Okay, that's it. That's
Mr.
all.
Burke, let me ask you
Thanks.
this. Most of the public were not present on the view of the premises. I'm kind of glad you weren't. I was exhausted after the view. It was an adventure. Mr. Burke is in excellent shape and goes up and down hills like a goat. But perhaps can you please tell us...
Smell like one too.
Well, it was very interesting. We appreciate your efforts. You were very kind. Could you just tell the public, when does the applicant have a meeting with MassDOT regarding the access onto onto Randolph Avenue? And there were some questions that were asked at an earlier hearing about the possible difficulty of taking that left-hand turn at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning, crossing basically 2 full lanes. And the issue became whether the state could restrict this property to right turn only, or whether the developer could do that or could not do it. What is your understanding of that? Tell us when the meeting is and with
Sure.
whom you're
The
meeting
meeting,
and what you're going to be
The
discussing.
meeting with MassDOT is on April 28th at 10 a.m. It's a preliminary meeting to meet with their engineers and ourselves to discuss the access into the property, if they have any concerns or issues with regards to the grade, location, radius of the curves, and the like. I don't expect many changes to the plan as it's provided. What MassDOT is really interested in is make sure the radiuses are large enough to get in and that you're not draining onto their property and meeting the right-of-way, so you're not adding stormwater into the street. And we're accomplishing both of those. We certainly have a significant amount of sight distance in both directions, both for stopping and intersection sight distance.
So is MassDOT concerned with public safety as part of
Sure.
this meeting?
Yep.
Okay. And is that a public meeting or is that a private meeting?
It's a private meeting. It's really, it's a preliminary meeting before we file for the permit. So we're looking for feedback from them before we file, and if they have any concerns, and they have the, not these sets of plans, but the other iteration, but there's no changes to the intersection they've had them close to 2 months now. And so I expect that they'll have comments based on that, and we'll implement them as we can.
Will you be filing Mr. Delaski's latest traffic impact and access study with MassDOT?
I will certainly bring it with us, and like I say, they don't have, all they have is the site plans right now. And if they are interested in the counts, none of these, the thresholds, the parking, the units numbers, the traffic generation, triggers anything related to MEPR or anything like that. So I would be surprised if they had a lot of concerns with regards to the volume coming out. They'll probably have questions with regards to how that volume impacts the current flow. And we'll certainly provide those answers, and if they want the report, we'll certainly submit it to them.
Is it your understanding that since this access driveway is really it's private property,
Yes.
that MassDOT could not restrict this property to right-hand turn only, let's say from 7 to 9 in the morning, and is that?
My understanding
What's your understanding is how that?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, my understanding is that they can strongly suggest,
Okay.
if they feel that it's warranted.
Good. I don't have any further questions. What do you want to go on to next?
We can talk about the soils, because that had a significant impact to the drainage as far as, I'll get back to that. So when there was a lot of snow on the ground, we decided to go on the site and do some test holes to determine the soil's capability of receiving stormwater. I did a design of stormwater using a Rawls rate of 1.02 inches per hour, which is a conductivity of a B soil. And Scott Turner noticed that the NRCS, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, mapped this area as a C soil, which is a more dense, less permeable soil. And his concern was that I was not taking in account, I was not conservative enough in the design. And I've done, and again, to the advantage, or to my benefit, that I've done a decent amount of work in town, and I've got an idea of what the soils are, and I use the 1.02. So when we did the test pits, we did test pits down to the elevations required where we show the underground stormwater infiltration / detention basins.
How far did you go? How deep?
And the ones up on top of the hill, we went down like 20 feet. And further in, actually, down the other side of the hill, we didn't have to go down as deep because that's in a filled state.
Yep.
So when we got down to the elevation of where the basins were going to be, we did a sample. We submitted those samples to American Engineering and Testing, and they did a sieve analysis and a hydrometer test. That determines the amount of sand, silt, and clay in the sample. Once you have that percentages, you put it on the textural triangle, which is the figure to the right. The figure to the left is actually American Engineering Testing's lab report, and that'll dictate what type of soil it is, and anywhere from a sand to a loamy sand to a sandy loam to a loam to a silt loam to a clay loam. And as you go down that hierarchy of soils, it enters a hydrologic group A, B, C, and D. All the soils that we sampled were either A soil or B soil. So the 1.02, which is a sandy loam, that was the majority of the soil on site. In the end, I could make an argument that the 1.02 was accurate. The next most was probably the loam, which was a 0.52 rating for a B soil. I ended up using that. I revised the stormwater calculations to make them comply with a more conservative figure, because I know Scott would have beat me up on it. Okay. So that brings us to the stormwater. And the stormwater was revised to accommodate that 0.52 less permeable material. What that in turn did is increase the size of the underground detention areas and change the outlet locations with regards to the vertical column of water and how it's released. The goal, of course, is meeting the 10 standards of DEP stormwater management guidelines, the regulations now, DEP stormwater management requirements, and we certainly meet those 10 standards from a water quality standpoint. One of also niche engineering's responses was to clean the water a little bit more efficiently before it goes into the detention basin. And so we provided the additional proprietary water quality tanks in front of those detention basins. So then you're moving on to the peak flow. We certainly meet that standard, as well as suspended solids removal, as well as the recharge requirements. I mean, the whole system itself is based on recharge, so we exceed that requirement significantly. And I've used, instead of using the sea soils for meeting that requirement as stated in the NRCS, which is what they ask you to do, my soil testing said, okay, Jimmy, you got B soils on site, so I use B soils instead, which is a harder standard to meet. So in the long run, as usual, after a peer review, the project becomes better, becomes a little tighter, and you know, and I look forward to Scott's comments, you know, when he's available.
Okay, great. Have you completed your presentation?
Yes.
Jeff, do you have any questions of Mr. Beck?
So on the soils and on the water issues, can you talk a little bit about the intersection of this board's review of the application with what's happening at the Concom and the status of things with the Conservation Commission?
Sure, I can speak on that. You know, Conservation will be getting this same package for their review this week. Their next meeting is May 16th? May 12th? And there's also a vernal pool consultant that's going to be jumping onto the site, I think, next week.
We intend to get back to the town vernal pool consultant.
So we're moving forward with the Conservation Commission and trying to answer their questions. There's a lot of overlap, especially with the stormwater. So I think they'll be leaning on, Scott Turner's review once he's completed. And honestly, if there's something that he wants to tweak, I'm sure we will be available. I look forward to sitting down with him and discussing that stormwater control. And like I say, it's meeting the 10 standards for, that's going to be the important part.
And what and when would you expect a decision from them?
From the Concom?
Yeah.
From the Concom? I would expect them, they're going to be looking at Scott's review. They won't issue a decision until after that, until they feel that niche engineering is satisfied with the stormwater controls. And as well, or until, we agree to disagree at that point. And until the vernal pool issues are resolved. I'd say that's about all, and then, and then I think that's about it.
And the outcome, order of conditions?
I hope so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't think you told us when you reasonably expected
Oh,
that
when,
decision to be rendered.
I would say, if we're looking, if the next meeting is May 12th, I'd say the meeting after that.
Which is expected to be, Mr.
June.
Casciano, do you know?
Yeah, I was just going to address additional part of what Jim was addressing. So the Concom matters. The Concom is looking at and deciding upon issues with respect to the state jurisdiction. We've gone over this a couple of times. With respect to the local permit, that's the purview and authority of the ZBA and the Chapter 40B to issue those permits under 40B with the Concom's input, of course. I just wanted to clarify that for the record as well.
I don't think I understand that.
The applicant has requested a waiver of the local conservation restriction, conservation bylaws from this board. So the Concom is hearing only on the state requirements. I would recommend that it might be helpful to get additional comments from the Conservation Commission addressing the applicant's request for those local waivers, which was something that your board would be issuing, and there would be potentially conditions included in the decision by this board that would address the issues raised by the Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
I think that's, Ms. O'Donnell's comments are correct, 100% correct. That having been said, I don't know what information we've been provided by the applicant or by even our peer consultants dealing with the differences between the state regulations and the local regulations. I know I did ask the chairman of the Conservation Commission a couple of questions about to what extent does the applicant during the construction process impinge on the local what's the right word?
Bylaw?
No, the local
The no disturb zone?
So the buffer zone, so
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And he indicated that there was substantial impingement during the construction process.
Yes.
But then I think you pointed out, Mr. Burke, that there's going to be replication, and when all is said and done, there may be certain portions of a parking lot or
Right.
paving that may infringe on the in the town's buffer zones, but
Right.
that's all we've been provided with.
Well, the
So
thing is that,
we have never seen a plan or anything that reflects that.
well, the plans speak for themselves with regards to,
Well, they may, but we're not engineers.
no, I understand. And the,
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have submitted, everything that has been submitted to the Concom has also been submitted to the ZBA through our various submissions.
but if I can explain, you know, the main difference between the local bylaw and the State Wetlands Protection Act is the creation of a 25-foot no disturb buffer,
Yep.
no disturb zone. All right, it's a no-touch zone, and if you encroach into it, and the local requirement is to provide a report and stating why you're going in there and why it's not an impact to the wetlands in the area. Now, the 25-foot disturbance, and we actually did a breakdown for the Conservation Commission at the last hearing, I believe, and the only disturbance that's going to be permanent in that 25-foot buffer is 210 square feet, and it's up in the northwest corner of the parking lot where there's a retaining wall. We also, I did a quick little,
Have we received these materials? Because I honestly don't recall them.
yeah, and you know what, I think we just created them at the last hearing, and it was honestly, it was more of an informational thing. I don't even think I gave it to them, it was just numbers that I generated to speak to them about, because they'd be concerned with it. And we talked about the alternatives to that, getting out of that 25-foot buffer. And the alternative was, eliminating green space within the parking lot, pulling in that side of the parking lot, and creating those spaces there. And, we'd get further away and totally outside of that 25-foot buffer. There'd still be some temporary disturbance, but we'd be able to get that 210 square feet out of there and have no permanent alteration of the 25-foot buffer. And their response was somewhat indifferent, because honestly, we didn't have that plan to show them how far we could pull it out.
Are you in the process of preparing such a plan and having reasonable calculations as to exactly what the amount of permanent disturbance is?
We can do that, sure.
And you're going to be submitting that to us as well as to the Conservation Commission?
Yes, if we submit, yes.
That'd be
Absolutely.
at least to me, that'd be very helpful.
So let me ask a question if that.
Yes.
So let me just make sure I understand that. So as part of the request to the board, you've asked for a waiver of all local requirements for the Concom, and you're dealing with the Concom on the Commonwealth's requirements.
Right.
That's really the nature of the proceeding that will lead to an order. You've asked for a waiver of all of them, but notwithstanding that, you're still working with the Concom on this main differential, which is the 25-foot no-touch zone.
Yes, I believe that's the case, yeah.
Now, okay, so would you expect to modify your maybe this is a question for your counsel. Would you expect, if you're successful with the Concom on the 210-foot impact in the northwest corner, for example, the permanent impact, and the temporary disturbance, would you modify that request? Here's why I asked that question. Because you've asked for a complete waiver, and yet on the most important difference between the state and the local, you're still working with the Concom, which indicates to me that maybe you don't need a waiver. I don't know.
You do need, you will need a waiver, because we're still working in a no-touch zone for replication, for construction, for the wetland crossing itself. So that waiver doesn't go away.
So is it a full waiver as modified by the findings of the Concom on the local application, or has the Concom abdicated, I mean this in a bad way, abdicated the local jurisdiction to the Board of Appeals? That's a question I have.
We're looking for a full waiver. The reason why we're still discussing this with the Concom is because they are providing input to this board with respect to the local matters. So we want to make sure that that board is fully apprised as to the project plan so that they can provide appropriate input to you.
And on the,
Go ahead.
Oh, I just had a quick question for Mr. Caggiano.
you're the chair.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry, can you hold on?
Yeah,
Let Mr.
absolutely.
Mullen finish his line of questioning.
So on the 210-foot impact, which could be eliminated by, as I understand it, eliminating some of the interior landscaping in the parking lot so that you can keep the parking spaces, is that likely to happen?
I'm sorry, is what likely to happen?
The modification? Is that likely to be proposed?
Jim, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I guess, you know, we can do, it ends up, we could pull it even further back if you wanted to do another ratio of parking. I mean, we're at 1.7 now. You know, if you end up losing 2 spaces, we'd probably still be at 1.7. It comes down to where do you want the design to be? Right now, the impacts, that particular wetland that we're impinging on isn't even a state jurisdictional wetland. It's, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an isolated land subject to flooding that doesn't comply with the state requirements for that term. So it's basically a pocket of wetlands that has no jurisdiction except in the local bylaw. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, we show it because we want to make sure that everyone's aware of what, you know, what the impacts are. If, you know, if we're just doing a state filing, we could take that wetland out and there's no impact. But since we're asking for a waiver, we're bringing it, you know, above board. Now, if we wanted to pull it completely out and take some parking spaces out of there, and does it make a better project, and is it something that the zoning board of appeals prefers, then I'm all for it.
I don't know. I don't know what to prefer, but here's the point that I'm making, and that is, you made a reference earlier to the alternatives analysis that's important when we evaluate environmental impacts on the site. And as manifested in the 24-foot cross-section entering the property, that results in a smaller sidewalk than one that some of our peer reviewer had recommended. But I don't see that same alternatives analysis in the northwest corner, that's all. So I don't know what the better project is, but it seems like when the alternatives analysis was applied to the access, the yield was to hold a limited environmental impact. But in the northwest corner, it resulted in more parking. That's all. That's my observation.
Okay?
And my only question is to make perfectly clear my understanding that this 25-foot non-disturbance zone, when you're asking for a waiver from the local bylaw, that's the bylaw that you're requesting a waiver from. And there's no other portion of the bylaw that we would be waiving without having a discussion about it. Is that true? It just
yes.
deals just with this 25-foot
That's my
non-disturbance
understanding.
zone.
I don't know. That wasn't testimony, I'm sorry. The testimony was that that's the most important one, not the entirety of it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd have to get back to you on that after looking back at it's been a while since I've looked at the bylaw itself.
Okay, I just don't want to find out that we tend to agree with you on the 25-foot non-disturbance zone, and we find out we've waived some other provision of the local bylaw that may be of equal or greater significance, and it's an unknowing waiver. We'll look like we didn't do our homework.
Sure, I understand.
Okay, that's great. Ms. O'Donnell, you had a
That
question.
actually was my point, is that it would be helpful for the applicant's counsel to provide some better details on what waivers they're actually looking for, and propose the conditions for the permit that would address the issues that are required by those waivers, rather than just I want you to waive everything that's the town's wetlands bylaw. Is that when you're looking forward to what might actually end up becoming a permit, it's helpful get from the applicant the information as to which specific provisions in the wetlands bylaw are a problem, and how the applicant supposes to address those issues by conditions that they're going to put into the site.
Sure.
Do you understand?
Yep, I
Yeah.
get it.
Mr. Burke, have you said your piece?
If you have any other questions?
No, I don't think we do. Mr. Casciano, whom do you wish to address the board next?
Mr. Delasky.
Professor, if you could just hold on 1 second, please. You folks want to come on in and so you can hear the testimony? You're perfectly content to stay there if you want, but we're delighted to have you. There's certainly a seat here. We've got 3 seats here if you want to. You certainly can stand. So can you hear everything that's being said, folks that are out here? Okay. Mr. Delasky, Professor, welcome back to the Board of Appeals.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Delasky, and I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Massachusetts, and I'm a consultant on this project working under DeSalle Burke.
What have you got to say about Mr. Dirk's
So with respect to
peer
Mr.
review of the traffic and access issues?
Absolutely. A couple of things I'd like to go over tonight is looking at what Mr. Dirk wrote, and then also talking about what he testified about that night, and then answering any questions that you may have.
Great.
So by and large, we agree with many of the suggestions by Mr. Dirk in terms of the overall report itself. We started collecting data before Mass DOT implemented the 7-year rule. Meaning that when we look at traffic impact and access studies now, we now go to a 7-year planning horizon. Ours was
Let me
prepared.
just hold you 1 second. Can everybody hear Mr. Delasky?
Ours was prepared under a 5-year horizon, so we agreed with Mr. Dirk in terms of looking at a 7-year horizon. We also added another intersection to the study area, which was basically the intersection of Reedsdale Road, Pleasant, and Quarry Lane. And the major reason for doing that is Mr. Dirk noted an imbalance in traffic along Randolph Avenue. We did not account for it in the original report because we looked at it and said most of this cut-through traffic or Pleasant Street traffic is moving away from Randolph Avenue. There was no reason to include it. We went back, we quantified it, and we performed an analysis not only on Quarry at Pleasant and Reedsdale, but also at Pleasant and Randolph Ave. So both ends of those were evaluated from a safety perspective. The Quarry Lane end was evaluated for an operational perspective because on the other end, Randolph Ave at Pleasant, you can't evaluate, typically you don't evaluate something like that because it's free flowing. It's always away from Randolph Avenue. Sightlines were checked, and Mr. Dirk has a copy, and you have it as well in your traffic impact and access study in terms of pulling out of the proposed drive and looking north or looking south. The intersection sight distance as well as the stopping sight distance is satisfied. So that was addressed. And we added additional material in terms of pedestrian access and public transportation along the corridor, made that a little bit cleaner and clearer in the traffic report itself. So overall, we agreed with Mr. Dirk, and as Mr. Burke pointed out, it made us produce a document that was, I guess, a little more tighter and deleted or removed some of the assumptions that were made in terms of traffic in front of Randolph Ave, specifically being that traffic that goes up Pleasant Street. In terms of a couple of things that were said that night, in terms of, you asked a question, Mr. Leonard, or a member of the board did, in terms of, can you ride a bicycle on a sidewalk?
I did.
Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 85, Section 11B, outside of a business district, unless a town has a local ordinance, you can ride bicycles on sidewalks. So I just wanted to address that and bring that to your attention. I know the last time you took comment, the police chief also stated that there were 4 fatals in the area, and there were. I believe there was one at Chickatavic Road, and there were 3 at in the vicinity of Heather Drive. One was a pedestrian being hit, and the other 3 were resulting from people losing control of their vehicle. Somebody hit a traffic control signal. Somebody hit a tree, and the other one was a head-on collision. So it was south of our site and out of our study area. We did look into it. We requested the information from the chief, and he provided that. We looked into that, and again, those were the results. In terms of access, I'm happy to take any questions that you have in terms of trip generation or what we can expect in terms of safety. When we think about safety, and there's been a lot of discussion about this access point, as transportation engineers, as safety engineers, we rely typically on historical data. And so when you look at the report, you now have 4 years of data in front of you for the study area intersections, and there's really nothing that's anomalous in terms of these areas are unsafe. We compare those to Mass DOT, district-wide as well as statewide crash rates, and there's nothing that's jumping out at us in terms of this is an unsafe area. If it were, meaning the intersections, we would recommend mitigation factors for the client. And then when we look at the corridor itself, in between Reedsdale and Reed, you have about 20 plus or minus residential homes. You also have the Public Works garage that has an access out to Randolph Avenue. And the crash data show for the last 4 years that there have been no issues in this area when it comes to crashes reported or recorded by the registry or Mass DOT.
Wouldn't the frequency of use from people leaving this particular driveway at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning be much more intense than using the DPW yard or somebody pulling out of a private driveway?
Well, when you look at, again, going back to the number of residential homes that are in between the two bookended intersections, you have approximately 20 homes. And so if we assume that half of those people are leaving during the peak hour, or if we assume all of them are leaving during the peak hour, we already have close to the 28 people that we're projecting to leave our site during the peak hour. And so it's a comparable number in terms of looking at what's there today, people pulling out of their driveways. We've got 28 expected to leave the 90-unit site. Not all 90 people or 90 units are going to leave the site during the AM peak. We project approximately 28 leaving and about 10 entering.